Good, everyone.
Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Michael.
Morning.
Good
Good
morning, Mike.
morning, Michael.
Fantastic.
Good morning, Michael.
Morning. Looks like Nicole has a new hairstyle. Fantastic. Super duper. So the good news is you had a phenomenal long weekend. Probably not long enough, but you probably had a good time because you haven't done very much. So what you want to be doing, however, is because we've lost a day, we've lost Monday, and therefore everything is kind of crunched in a little bit right now. Right now, we're going to start into some new training, and then, of course, on Friday, you have a final exam. So you really need to, as I said last week, go over everything and really kind of catch up a little bit because some of you are a little bit behind and some of you are on target. So for those of you who are a little bit behind time, you definitely want to get all of those things in, like your projects, your quizzes, get them done as quickly as possible. Don't kind of hold off on them because I'm not going to keep extending time. You really have to focus a little bit and get things done. So just keep that in mind going forward. Today we're going to take a look at charts. We're going to take a look at how they work within Excel, and we're also going to take a look at one more formula. That formula is called the PMT, which actually allows us to determine what the, let's say, monthly rate is if we took a loan out. And unfortunately, this is something that a lot of companies actually do use is the PMT function. So in addition to everything else we explored on Friday, and hopefully you've taken some time during the weekend to go over some of those. I know most of you probably haven't, but you should actually take a little extra time to do that. So let's take a look at some of them. I'm just going to pull this across for a moment. There we go. So I'm going to use this particular sheet. I believe I have added it to your particular list anyhow, so you should have it, the PMT. Just in the chat, do you have the PMT on the file I sent you before? Just double check and see if it's there. Yes, no, maybe, could be, should be, possibly, who knows? We're not sure. Okay, I'm just going to open it up again and make sure I save that with you. Okay, let's just put it here for the moment. Okay, it says it's open. Where is it? So just looking for that one file, I'm just going to share it with you again so that you do have it available to you. Just pull this out of the way for a moment. So inside the chat, I'm just sharing that file just to make sure that you have it available to you and you'll be able to access it and use it. This particular formula, PMT,
Michael,
yep, go ahead.
Michael, my file doesn't have PMT. The one which you sent on this students chat.
Okay, the one I just put there right now,
Okay.
yeah, that one does.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
So what you can see on my screen, you should be able to see my screen right now. Hopefully everybody can. Fantastic, look at that. Isn't that exciting? There we go. So here we have a formula which is going to help us calculate how much the monthly payments are. When you take out a loan, there's interest and there's also a period of time. This particular formula will assist us in better understanding what the actual dollars are and what we are going to have to pay on a monthly basis. But there's one thing about this formula we have to keep in mind as an absolute, and that is it uses months and it uses everything broken down into months. So this is something we definitely have to keep track of, especially when we're trying to use this particular formula, because it doesn't automatically convert it. We have to make sure it's broken down to it. So I'm going to type it into this particular cell. I'm just going to widen this cell a little bit so we can see it more clearly. There it is. So it says here that the principal is $15,000. That's what we're borrowing. And the interest rate on that 15,000 is 6.5%. Whenever the interest rate is given to you, it's always yearly. So we have to, because this formula works on months, we have to break it down to months. So we'll be dividing this by 12% or 12 times. And it also says here the number of years we intend to pay this back is 4 years. But remember, we need months. Therefore, we will multiply the 4 by 12 in order to get 48. So let's just do that particular formula. I'm going to type in equal. I'll type in PMT. I want you to write this down so that you actually do remember what it is. And the first thing it's asking us for, if we look at this little tooltip, is what is the percentage rate? Well, the percentage rate is the 6.5%. So I click on that. But remember, I just said this is per year, and we need per month. So I'm going to actually divide this by 12. And then I'll put a comma, because that's what I wanted to do, break it down into monthly portions of the interest rate. The next part is it wants to know per what. So in this case here, it's 4 years. But again, we need months. So I'm going to have to multiply that 4 by 12 in order to get the number 48. So I'm just going to click on it, and I'm going to multiply it by 12. Then I'll put a comma. So far we have the monthly interest rate, and we now have the number of months, which are 48. And now it wants to know, what is the principal amount? What is the actual value? Well, that's 15,000. So I'm going to click on that cell, 15,000, because it's going to calculate the monthly value of what we would have to pay based on that interest over that period of time. And I'm going to close it off. Okay, closing the bracket, and then I'll press enter. And that tells me that it's $355.72. So without a down payment, if I simply borrowed $15,000 at 6.5% per year, at 4 years, it would actually be $355.72 per month. That's how much I'd have to pay in order to pay it off, plus the interest. And we can basically see how much that is as well. Here, we've actually got a little formula underneath this. I placed it there for you. You don't have to think about it, but let's just take a look at it. If I know the monthly, then I recognize that this formula to find out what the total amount is requires that I have at least how many months this is actually going to be. So here I have the monthly amount, in other words, 4 months, 4 years, I should say, times 12, which is 48, times the month. So if I know it's 48 months and I know how much I'm paying per month, then I can just simply take that value and automatically generate what I need. But here's a little caveat for you. There's a minus sign here. Now, I didn't explain why this monthly rate is actually a negative, but the 15,000 is what we borrowed, and the $355 is what we are subtracting on a monthly basis. So it will automatically come up with a negative figure. Therefore, if I want a positive figure to tell me how much in total, I have to put a negative in there, because if you remember back in grade school, they said that when you have a plus and a minus, it's always a negative. If you have a negative and a positive, it's a negative. But if you have two positives, it's a positive. And if you have two negatives, it's a positive. So in this case, by having a negative for our monthly balance and by putting a negative in front of it, it automatically makes it a positive figure. So when I press enter, I get a positive number. And it tells us fundamentally, I'm paying over $2,000 in interest over 4 years. So this is actually a very interesting calculation because the moment you start to manipulate some of those figures, and we did this on Friday with GoalSeek. With GoalSeek, we also used the PMT formula, and we were modifying it to see what would happen if we changed the interest rate, what would happen if we changed the amount of months that we were actually trying to carry this over. So this particular formula, I want you to remember it and write it down because it is an important formula and you will be running into it on your final test, and you definitely will be running into it on a quiz and your project. So PMT stands for monthly payments, and we are breaking it down by months. So it's really important that when you're given a total interest rate, that you must divide it by 12 to find out what each month is worth. And when you get years rather than months, you must multiply that by 12 to find out how many months in total is the term that you are borrowing that particular money. So this actually makes it really easy. If you want to buy a car, you could figure it out really, really quickly. Let's just say, for instance, you were buying a car and you decided to make it, let's say, 8 years. Nowadays, you can actually buy a car for 8 years, and let's say it's $35,000. A lot of cars nowadays are a little overpriced. So we'll say $35,000, 6.5%. Now you can get a lot cheaper. Let's just say it's 3.5%. Fantastic. And it basically tells us that per month, it is $418, and that would be what we needed. Of course, underneath that, we could add a few more things like your insurance premiums could be about $150 to $200 a month, maybe more. Or we could actually add fuel, which could be another 100 depending on how much you actually travel. And of course, wear and tear on the vehicle, we'd put aside at least $100 per month just to make sure that we can afford to fix it when we need to fix it. One of the shocks that you'll actually run into every so often is when you change the oil, it'll cost you a couple of $100, and that'll happen every 2,000 miles. And when you change the tires twice a year, that'll be about $1,200. So just keep those things in mind. You need that extra little bit of money. This helps us. This helps us to figure out what would the total actually be for us. So these are things that are useful, this kind of formula. But the one thing, once again, I really do want to stress is it's based on monthly payments. And therefore, everything must be converted into a month. So that means the interest rate must be converted into 12 payments. In other words, 12 monthly increments. So we divide it by 12. And because the number of years are in years rather than months, we have to multiply that by 12. So I want you to remember that because this is really important to you, that you are totally aware of PMT. Now, there are some other formulas on the sheet, and I'm not going to go into these ones. This one I would go into in an advanced course because this actually shows us how much interest would be gained over a period of time if we put money in the bank. So how much would we end up with at the end of it? Slowly losing my voice this morning. Holy smokes. This is what happens when I don't use my voice all weekend. Fantastic. So this actually would be another formula, which is a little different. This is future value. And once again, I've defined it a little bit for you, but I'm not going to go into this one. You can play with this one if you are so inclined to do so. Some of the other formulas in here are for the advanced course. So for those of you who are quite interested in carrying forward I've created some variations here that you can experiment a little bit with, the SUMIFs and the SUMIFS, and also the VLOOKUPs, the lookups, the right, left. This is a very complicated formula, so I'm not really going to go into this one except in the advanced. And this is what I indicated before when I suggested that you can have formulas inside of formulas inside of formulas. Here I have several formulas nested inside of one another. There's really only one formula here. I'm looking for the value at the right-hand side of one of these two cells, A or B. And in this case here, in order to find that, I had to find out how many characters there were in the name, because of course you can see that each part of the name is a little different in width. So you had to figure it out, and this teaches the computer how to find that information. So I don't want to go into it, but you have it up here so you can at least see some of the advanced formulas. We can also trace formulas to find out whether or not that particular formula is based on some specific information. In other words, where that particular information will come from. We can actually trace that and find out where does the data come from and what is it responsible for. There are some other ones here too, dcount. I'm not going to go into dcount, but it is a very powerful little type of counting thing, which allows us to actually count very specific information. And now I can basically see for radios in Sarnia, well, there are no radios in Sarnia, so it comes up with 0. And of course, I could use the units here and determine, well, I want 50 units. So I'll just kind of change this to, let's say, Toronto, still 0 units. And it's Radio Toronto. What if I chose 400? It says there's only one entry for that. So each one of these formulas are more of an advanced area, except of course for this one, and that's the PMT. So I really do want you to spend a little bit of time becoming very aware of using PMT. It's a very simple formula to use, but you do have to remember just one very important element, and that is that the interest is always calculated as a yearly value, and you must divide it by 12 to find out what the monthly value is. And when it actually comes down to the number of years, again, we need the months, so I have to multiply that by 12. So keep those two things in mind and write it down so that you have that. Piece of cake. So I'm just going to open up the other one here. Excuse me. So in this situation here, this is the original sheet I gave you. It doesn't have the PMT. That's why I gave you the other ones. So in this case here, what if I wanted to see this graphically? This is what we're going to spend most of today on, is the graphic side of things. It really is nice when you can see it. Data is really nice, and this is tiny, so we can see all the numbers here. And you and I are smart enough to look at this and say, oh, 462, that's a big number. There's a bigger one at 768. So I can see, and you can see the difference of this. So that's easy enough to do. But when you have thousands of these numbers, they can confuse your eyes a little bit, and it can be difficult to make sense out of things, especially the relationship of numbers. So it might be easier if we could actually make a chart out of it. And we're going to experiment with charts a little bit. So I'm just going to open this up. I'm going to select my field names and the data below it. Okay. Now, there's only one chart we can't use with this kind of data format, and that's a pie chart. And the reason for that is you would have to have just one set of numbers with one set of fields. That would allow you to have a pie chart. So we're going to play around with a number of different types. Now, there's another thing that's really kind of not so great about this, and that is if I choose too many of these variables, then it's going to be very difficult to show me the information I want to see, because there's a big difference between the 700s and the 0. Okay, there's such a massive disparity between them, such a big gap, that it doesn't make sense to try to create, let's say, create a chart, because it would show virtually nothing in one folder. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to open up, let's say, just this one here. It's a column chart, and I'll choose just the first option so that I can see what it looks like. And there it is there. You can see the 0 is down here, and there is nothing being shown. And when I look at the other columns, especially the big ones, which are in the 700s, the 400s, 700s, and then we have these little teeny weeny ones like 16 and 10 and 12. Well, they don't show up very well at all. So when I'm actually designing a chart, I want to choose information that is of some practical value. So what I'm going to do here is I'm simply going to select what I wanted, which is this particular column. And I'm also going to select gross pay. So the easiest approach to do this is to hold down the control key. And I think I'll take regular pay as well, because I want to see the difference between them. And I'm just selecting those 3 columns. Now, I realize I ran into a problem doing this before with this newer version. So let me just go back in here. Okay, so it is showing me both columns. Once again, I've only chosen these 2 columns, and I can then choose, let's choose this one here. There you go. So now I have the 2 columns, and I can see the difference between regular pay and gross pay. So gross pay, as it points down here in the legend, let me just zoom up a little bit there. The gross pay is the reddish color. There you go. And that's in the legend. This is called the legend, by the way. And also the regular pay is blue. But here's the good news. It doesn't have to be blue. I can change that color, and it doesn't have to be kind of a burgundy red. I can change that color too. So there's a lot of things that I can modify here. We're going to experiment with all of those. But I wanted you to see how quick it is to get a graphical appearance. In fact, I can even see who is getting the most money, which is this one here. Ricardo is actually getting the most. He's way up there around $800, a little over $800. And this one here is a little bit lower. This one here is very close to the regular pay. So regular pay and gross pay, probably no overtime whatsoever. And this actually gives us a graphical reference as to what the information will look like. So what if I wanted to see what the regular pay is and also what the overtime is? Well, I can do that as well. I can take a look at, let's just say, these 3. There we go. So now I've got these 3. So I can actually see a good representation to how many hours they've worked and how many overtime hours they've actually worked and what the rate is itself. So I can go back in here to insert. And by the way, we could use a quick analysis if we wanted to. There's another feature here which might help us, even though we can choose which particular chart we would like to use. And there are quite a few different varieties of chart here. We can also use what the computer believes would be to our advantage, and that's the recommended chart. Now, in recommended, it looks at our data and it says these are the ones that kind of fulfill what you're trying to accomplish. And of course, we get quite a few of them that we can choose from. So you can decide which one actually fits your needs better than some other. I'm just going to grab this one here, for instance. Okay, now click OK. And there it is. So now it's actually grabbed my data. It's even showing me the color combinations of them. And it's showing me what the overtime is in red. And I can see who has overtime and who doesn't, and how much overtime they actually end up working. And I can also see how many hours they put in. So this is also very important for me. It gives me a basic idea, how many overtime hours, how many regular hours, and then of course, what's the hourly rate of this individual? So how much money are they actually making when it comes to their hourly rate as well? So who makes more? This fella makes more. It's a good idea. We're not giving them overtime. It would cost us too much. So it's kind of a graphical approach to showing us the data, but there's different ways of seeing it. So what if I don't like this particular one? Well, I can come up here to where it says chart design, and I can decide I would prefer a different kind of variation to this chart. There are many different styles, by the way, that I could choose from if I was inclined to choose a different style. However, I can even change the colors that I'm using, different color variations. Yep.
Can you sort right from the chart screen?
Yes, I can, but not the way it's set up right now.
Okay.
Okay, but I will show you how that's done. We'll be slicing it. So in this case here, I can delete it and I can decide to choose something else. But there are other ways of doing this as well. So recommended once again, and maybe I want to choose, let's choose this one. And this one kind of shows me the overtime, same coloration. So I'll click OK. And there it is there. Now there's one other little caveat here, which is actually very important. And that is the move chart. So on the ribbon in chart design, you'll notice on the right-hand side, there is move chart. I can drag this anywhere I want it. In fact, as you and I already know, because it's an object, it's got these little handles on it, little circles. We can actually make it smaller if I want to, or I can make it bigger if I want to. However, there is something else we can do here, and that is to move it. So I can decide where it's going to be. Right now, sheet number 1, which is where I am, sheet number 1, I can see that at the bottom. And the alternative is I can put it on a different sheet if I want to. I may have one sheet that has maybe 20 or 30 different charts of different types of information, so I can get a good feel for what the data is telling me. Or I can actually create a sheet for itself, and I can name it anything I want. So I'll call this one Mike. This is the Mike sheet. And when I click OK, it automatically creates a brand new sheet called Mike. And the only thing on it is this particular chart. Nothing else is on that particular sheet. And if I decide, wait a minute, now I made a mistake, then I can go back in here and simply choose, let's put it back on sheet number 1. Click OK, and there it is right back again. So not only can we modify this, and we are going to do this because there's different ways of representing your data. Again, we may want to have some of the values in the chart itself rather than at the bottoms or on the sides. We may actually want to have a little bit more information in there. Perhaps what I really want is the table itself underneath the chart so that I could actually print this chart and the data would actually be underneath it as well. So if I click on this one, there you go. Now I have the chart underneath it, and I can basically see what each one of these actually represents. And again, I can move that anywhere I want it to be. So charts are actually really nice in as much as it gives me a good graphic representation of the data. Now, as I said a few minutes ago, maybe what you really wanted to do is see a pie chart. And that would mean I could see the entire payroll. So I'm going to actually choose this field name. I'm going to choose everything in it. I'm going to hold down the control key for a moment, and I'm going to choose gross pay. So now I only have those two fields, and I've held down the control key so that I could select that one column. And now I'm going to come in here and again insert, and I'm going to choose a pie chart instead. Now there are several kinds of pie chart, and I could use this one here, or what I could do is a three-dimensional pie chart. I actually like the three-dimensional pie chart, so I'm going to click on it. And there it is. So now I have this 3D pie chart. And you know, the beautiful thing about this is if I want to draw your attention to something, and I could say, look at this guy, he actually makes more money than anyone else. So I'm just going to pull it aside so that you can see this guy makes more money. Or I could actually put it back to where it is. And I could just click on that one so that only that one is selected. And I can see the little selection handles around it. And I can pull that one out so that I can actually draw your attention to that particular individual and that they're making more money than anyone else. Fantastic. So that's the nice thing about the pie chart. Now, just keep in mind, it looks this way, but I can rotate it too. And of course, the styles up here, I can choose whichever style I prefer. And there are many different types of style that you could decide upon that might actually be better for you to represent your data with. Fantastic. So different styles that you could actually decide upon. It's up to you entirely. Super duper. Okay, just gonna delete this. My computer has frozen a little bit here. It has frozen a little bit. One second. Super duper. Okay. So maybe what I really want to do is find out what the regular pay is for each person. So once again, I can choose this and I can choose the regular pay. I'll hold down the control key and just look at that. So in insert, however, I may want to choose different kinds of chart to represent the data. So I'm going to go back here to recommended because there's also all charts. Now, keep in mind, I chose just these two columns, and it doesn't give me very many when it comes to recommended. It doesn't seem to think that there's a lot of data there. However, in all charts, I may decide to choose, let's say, a combination chart. Now, a combination chart allows me to choose several different kinds of chart to represent the data. So let's just go back in here, and I'm going to select. Let's just select our three here again. So hours, overtime, and hourly rate. And now I'm going to come in here and do that one more time. And I'll choose all charts. And I'll choose combination. Because combination allows me to choose several different types of chart to represent the data. And I can basically see what it would look like if I chose different types of chart to represent that information, what the differences would be. And maybe in this case here, the first thing, the hours, I'd like to see the hours as, let's just say I'd like to see it as one of these charts. So this is a stacked area. So this is the regular hours. However, I'd also like to see some of the other things here, such as overtime. And overtime, I think I'd like to see that as one of these lines. So I'm going to choose the line. There's my red color for the overtime. And maybe what I want to see for hourly rate is, let's say we'll use something very similar. We'll use this one here. So now I have this. I can actually see the hourly rate in green. I can see the regular hours. And they're a separate chart entirely. And the third chart has just a line in it, and that's for my overtime. So the combination allows me to choose even a secondary axis as well. Okay, so I can actually choose that information, and I can actually see how that would actually be represented as well. So combination is only available when you have enough data to show. So in our case, we actually have 3 separate sections that I want to display, and therefore there are 3 sections here that can have 3 different graphs combined as one graph. So I can actually see information in a very, very different way. Piece of cake. So columns are really fascinating. We could have a lot of different things here, waterfalls. This is great if you happen to be doing something special where you needed that kind of information. Histograms, we can have the sunburst. In other words, you can see each section of your particular chart. Stock maps, and also areas, pie charts. There's our pie chart, a little different to see that kind of stuff. And we can actually use a donut as well. The donut gives us a better indicator as to each and every one of those individuals. However, there's something else here which is kind of important. And that is that the way we see something can be modified. So I'm going to choose a column for a moment. And let's just choose this one. We'll choose this one here just for kicks. There we go. So now I have a chart. And what's fascinating is that I can actually come up here and I can switch the data. Right now we're looking at hours, overtime, and hourly rate. And then of course each color happens to be associated with one of the employees. But what if I switch it? In other words, instead of having hours at the bottom, I have the individual's names, and then hours, overtime, and hourly will be different colors. Well, I can do that by switching the row and the column around. So if I click on that, I switch them around. If I click again, I switch it back. If I wanted to, I could actually choose different data. So this requires that you experiment a little bit so that you could actually add different elements here. Maybe the hours, the overtime is not what I want, so I'll take out the overtime. And I'll click OK. And now I can't see the overtime, but it's still there. It's just a question of reselecting it again. Maybe I only want to see the overtime. There you go. So there's just the overtime for who has it and who does not. Again, this is a graphical representation that really helps us to make sense out of how much people are actually earning or what the numbers look like. So there's some graphic context that gives us a clear indicator as to what it may look like. And of course, we can change the colors around if that's something we want to do, monotone, or any one of these combinations. And of course, the styles, which we've talked a little bit about already. You can actually modify these styles a bit. Changing the chart type, I don't like this one, so can I change it? Yeah, I don't kind of like it, so what if I use an area chart? Okay, let's click OK. Oh, it kind of looks a little bit better. So I have a lot of control over what is the end result I'm trying to accomplish. Maybe I want to use a pie chart. Well, I can use that as well. So there's my pie chart. And maybe what I want to see is it look like this, okay, which breaks it down by hours. So 40 hours, 40 hours, 40 hours, 38 hours. Or maybe I want to break it down this way. And again, I can see the numbers on the side, or a donut chart. Again, it's how is it going to be easier for you to make sense out of the data? And this may not be a good idea, that donut. This one here definitely is going to be difficult to make sense out of. And yet each one of these is actually an individual. And we could actually break that down by putting their names there as well. Surface, this is another type, and there are many variations of that particular structure. We could use this one here. It kind of looks nice, but it doesn't really help you understand, you know, what the hours are and what the overtime is, etc. So that's what we really wanted to get a good handle on. So we maybe want to use a particular chart that helps us a little bit. Maybe it's this particular bar chart that's going to help us. And if I really don't like the appearance of it, as I said before, we can come in here and modify this in any particular way we want to. And of course, we can always come back in and change the style of it. Now, just be mindful that maybe putting the entire chart underneath it isn't such a great idea. And putting the values of each one of the bars in there really doesn't make a lot of sense either, because it takes a lot of space away from you. And again, it's really a question of, I just want to see the data so that I can make sense out of it. And it's better sometimes if I can see the name associated with it. So I'm going to jump back here so I can actually see the person and see what the values are for each person. And I don't like having the numbers at the end. So all I need to do is come in here and just change that style around. So quick layout changes everything. Piece of cake. Fantastic. It seems like an awful lot, and yet in reality, it's not that much. It's just a question of, as you play around a little bit with these charts, you begin to get an idea of what you can do and what you can't. So just going to take it a step further here. Now, inside this, we have a few other things that are possible as well. And one of them happens to be, well, it says chart title. What does that mean? And it says hourly rate. What does that mean? So can I change these things? The answer is absolutely. Every one of these elements is floating on top. So they're all separate. So if I click on this chart title, I can move it anywhere I want to move it. It's just an item that is floating on top. And that goes for my, here's my legend being moved around as well. I can move my legend anywhere I want it to be, or I can decide to put it in a very specific location. I'll show you that in a second. So if I want to change the chart name, well, let's just put in here Mike's chart. There's Mike's chart. And of course, I can come in here and I can modify this a little bit with format. So I'll click on format up here. I would like to change the font. Let's change it this way here. Purple. Let's take the purple. There you go. So now it's purple. And I can change a lot of other things about it as well. In fact, because it's inside of a little box here, little rectangle, I can actually come in and put, let's say, a line around it, or I can change the color of the shape. Maybe what I'd like is to have it a little orange inside. Oh, there you go. So now it's orange inside. Maybe I'll put this border around it, or and there are many different kinds of border here. There you go. So now I have this kind of chart title, and I can move this around if I want to move it around. So it's not guaranteed to stay in one place. I can move it around, and I can move the chart around here as well. Now I can add other things as well, like this particular legend here. Maybe I want to put a color in the background here, so I put that color in. I don't like that one, maybe the purple one. Don't like the purple one, so we'll use the green one. So now I have a green one. So you actually have a tremendous amount of power over this, and you get a lot of power over where you put it. So it can be virtually anywhere you want to put it. Now, in addition to the formatting, is we can put text in here if somebody can't see this, which is always possible that a person may not be able to see it. And we can modify the size of it. Now remember, this is actually important for you because at some point it will ask you to make it smaller. So if I want to, and mine is currently centimeters, but I can change this to inches, and I'll show you that in a minute. I'm just going to change this to, let's say 6 instead. I'll press tab to accept the value, and now it modifies the height of it. Well, what about the width? Well, the width says 12.7. Let's make it 11, and I'll press tab. There you go. So now it's even smaller still. So I can change the size of it. I can lock the aspect ratio so that if I change one value, then both values change, width and height at the same time. There's other properties here as well. If you wanted to move some of those cells around, because here, once again, if I click on the table part of this, here's the names. I can move that around, and I can change the color in the background if I want. I can even change these lines and change the color of them. Right now they're green. So why don't I change the color? So we'll change the color. I'll just right click and I'll fill it with, what do you think, yellow? So I'll put in yellow. So now they're yellow instead. Again, you have a lot of control here as to what you actually make it. So maybe I want this one to be green. So let's make that green. So now we have yellow and green, and red is the overtime. Again, it changes my legend as well. All these numbers at the bottom, maybe I want to break it down. Instead of 0 to 10 to 20, which is 10 as an interval, maybe I want to make it 0 to 5. So I can change that as well. I can modify anything in here. If I click on this, then I can come in here and make some other changes, like maybe the number format. I want to change that. Maybe it's the labels I want to change. Or maybe it's the tick marks I want to change. Or maybe it's the options for the axis itself, which is the sizing. So instead of being 10, why don't we make it 5? So I'll change this to 5. Fantastic. And I'll press tab. And you notice it changes 0, 5, 10, 15. What if I made it 20? So let's make that 20 decimal. And I'll press tab. And now it's 0, 20, 40. So really, you have a lot of control here. I'm just going to put that back to 10 again. You can also, by the way, use reset. Reset is an important function. If at any time within a project or within a quiz or within a final test, it says it wants you to reset the value, then you would click on that button. Do not just simply type in the value, click on the button. And of course, we can determine, well, this goes up to 50. What if I really only wanted it to go up to, let's say, 40? So I'll click on 40 instead. Oops, wrong one. I said 400. I want 40. There you go. So it only goes up to 40 now. So you can modify this in so many different ways. And there are several ways of doing it. And again, I can click here. And this one allows me to format even further the vertical axes and also the text direction. Maybe I don't want a horizontal. Maybe what I want is it to be stacked. Okay, so now it's stacking it. Instead of 10, it's 1 with a 0 underneath. And if stacking isn't so good, maybe what I want to do is put it this way. Okay, so it's now 10, 15, 20. And what if I want to make it horizontal again? Well, there it is, horizontal. And of course, the alignment, I can align it anywhere I want it to be. So once again, you really do have a lot of capability here. Maybe I want to put a shadow under this box that I've clicked on. Well, I can just come in here and put a shadow in. So here's my shadow, and I'll select this one here. And you notice now it's got a shadow. And if I want to turn the shadow off, I can turn the shadow off. I don't want it. There you go. And maybe I want a shadow, let's say here instead. So I click on this box. And now, since that's still open, I'll choose a shadow there. Now I have a shadow around it. So this really does give you some amazing capability. You can put glows under it. So let's just minimize that. And we can go to 3D format. So maybe I want it to look like a button. Or maybe what I wanted to do is have soft edges. In other words, become a little bit more transparent around it. So there we go. Let's just bring it back a bit. Fantastic. Or maybe I want to put a glow around it. So I can even do that as well. Decide, oh, I like this kind of, there's an orangey glow. So I'll put an orangey glow around it. And of course, if I don't like it, I just take it away again. And of course, the color inside. Now, one of the things that is often overlooked here is I've just chosen my little chart here, and you notice that automatically it comes up and it says, okay, so these are the 3 sections that are in this chart, but I can change the color of it. What if I want to put a picture in the background? So you can either put a gradient or a solid color, or you can put a pattern in. If I want to put a pattern, there's lots of patterns here. Maybe I want to put that pattern in. Or what I really probably would like to do is put a picture. So I can actually go out there and find a picture of a dead fish. Excuse me. Or maybe what I want to use is burlap. Well, that's not so good either. Or maybe I can go out to the internet and find a picture I really like. So I can insert something else. I'll go out. Let's say stock images again. There we go. Oh, there's horses. Let's grab the horses. There you go. So now I have horses in the background. So really, or no fill at all. It's up to you what you do with this and how you set it up. We can put more vertical lines in, more horizontal lines in if we want to as well. Just going to make this a little bigger. There we go. So I can actually come back in here. Just going to change the colors a little bit. There you go. Put it back to the way it was. And I'm simply going to make another change here. We could change it that way, or, and here's the other caveat. Over here on the left-hand side at the very top of the ribbon, you'll see Add Chart Elements. Now, there's another place to do that, and that's this plus symbol, adding chart elements, which is the same thing. We can add different elements that we would probably want to have in this particular chart. But we're going to start over here first. So here it says in the axes, we can have primary axes or vertical or both. You can have either if we want them. So this one here is horizontal, or we can have vertical, or we can have a combination of both. And this one allows me to go in and make some changes. So you'll see over here that I can now make some changes as to how that axis actually is going to look, like those lines that come across here. But I can also, let's just close that. There you go. Come back over here again for a moment. Maybe what I wanted the titles, because now we have all these names here. Wouldn't it be nice to have a title here that said employees? So if I wanted to put in a vertical title, I just simply click here, and you'll notice it automatically comes up. So I'll just type in here employees. So we'll come back here. There's my employees. So now I have a brand new label down the vertical. Maybe I want one on the horizontal as well. So I can come in here. This is hours underneath the regular hours. So I'll just come in here and I'll say my axes. I'd like to have, let's have one of these. So this is the horizontal. So I'll put in regular hours. So regular hours is here as well. Just call it hours for the time being. That makes it more useful. There we go. So hours and employees. And of course, if this is too much for you, well, we can come in here and I can format it and I can make the color, let's say, more of a gray color so it's not so pronounced. And I can do the same thing here with the hours. I can come in here and choose gray so that it doesn't pronounce itself too much in the background. And of course, chart design again, I can come back in here and look at the title. Maybe I don't want a title, or maybe I want it to be centered over the chart itself, or above the chart, or somewhere else entirely. So options means that you can modify it even further. Maybe it's the data labels. Now, this is something that I don't like very much, but sometimes people like this. And this is to put the labels of what each one of those bars equals. So we might put it at the middle point or the center, so to speak, put it at the ends, or put it at the base, or put it outside the line. Again, it kind of congests it a great deal if you have too many elements in here. And of course, we can have callouts as well, which really, you've got to have something really simple for that. And of course, we can go in and make other changes as well. The table itself, instead of being somewhere on a sheet somewhere, let's just pull this over a bit. See, it's in the background, and maybe I have this chart on another sheet entirely. So maybe I want to make sure that you know where the data came from. So I can put in a data table. So there's none there now. I can put it underneath. And you need a lot of space so that you can show that information. No legend or with a legend. It's up to you entirely how it actually is represented. And of course, you can still change it even further. Error bars, now we're not using any. Guidelines, this is important because right now we have vertical. But what if I want to put in more vertical? So we have primary. What if I want to put in the minor? So if I click on minor, it puts in lots of extras in between. So now it makes it easier for me to determine how far is it? Is it 20 or is it 19 or is it 18? And of course, we can even decide how wide those little parts are as well. So if we wanted to make sure they're by a factor of 2 or 1 or 10, we can do that as well, depending on the numbers we're dealing with. So grid lines, and they can also be horizontal. So maybe I want to put in horizontal ones. Well, they're there right now. And I can put in the minor ones, which really kind of confuses everybody. And then, of course, the legend. Where do you want your legend? Do you want no legend? Do you want to have it on the right, above? Do you want to have it to the left? Do you want to have it at the bottom? Like, what do you want to have in there? Now, lines are not available because this is the wrong kind of chart. But if you had the right kind of chart, then lines would be available as well. For trending, we can decide how we want the trends to be. So maybe what we want to see is what direction are things going? Well, we can take a look at, let's say, a linear approach. And it wants to know what is it you want to see a linear approach to? Well, I'd kind of like to see the overtime. So we'll look at overtime. There you go. So now I have a line here that's showing me the overtime, the direction of the overtime. And of course, I can undo that, come back in here and do that again. So let's do it again. And this time instead, what I'd like to have is the hourly rate. Hourly rate, and click OK. And there's my line right there, dotted line. And it's kind of showing me where that would be situated as well. So lots of different elements that we can actually add in here by using these tools on the side, and that's on the ribbon. And the format, of course, well, once again, as I said, there are many ways of doing the same thing. So what if I decided I would prefer to do it this way? Well, I can choose what part of the chart I want to work with. Maybe it's this section here with the actual chart itself. So if I click on that part of it, so let's just choose, the plot area, which is this section here. And maybe I want to make some modifications to it. Maybe I want to format it. So I'll come in here and put a solid color in the background. Or maybe that's no good. I want to put a pattern in the background. So maybe I want to have lines in there. Maybe that's no good either. So you get to play around a little bit. And there are many different ways of approaching this and saying, how do I want to structure it? Maybe I don't like this red color. I'd prefer this to be some other color. So I can come in here and choose, let's say, something else. Orange, maybe yellow, or what other color do we have? Green. Let's choose green. So there's a vibrant type of green color. So we can actually choose any color we actually wanted in here. It really doesn't matter. You get to decide. We can also reset. So go back here, click on it. It resets everything back to square one. And of course, we can do even more for modifying. We can change how these boxes appear. Maybe we want them to be three-dimensional. There you go, three-dimensional. And therefore, these now become three-dimensional bars. And we can use this one here as three-dimensional as well. So let's just say this one. And of course, it didn't change. Well, that's not nice, but it should have changed. Super duper. And selection we won't worry about. Alignment we're not going to worry about right now. So let's come back in here and do this one more time. I'm just going to delete this one. So I'm clicking on the line around it, and I'm going to press delete on the keyboard. And it's history. So this time I'd like another one. And I'm going to select the gross pay. So just those two columns, and I'm going to create a new table. So here we are again, and I'm going to choose our bar. And I'll choose the regular bar. There you go. So there's my regular bars. Fantastic. Not very exciting, to say the least. So what I can do is change this a little bit. Remember, you have a lot of control over how it represents data. And you can modify and change the colors around. You can change different approaches with your particular styles that you want. We can change it around so that it's just the opposite. In other words, gross pay is on the bottom, which is what we wanted. And each one of these colors is now an individual. Put my mouse over it, I basically can see who it is. So it gives me that tooltip. But I kind of like to have a little legend here as well. So this time I'm going to click on the plus symbol. Now I'm just going to get rid of my ribbon for a moment, because I'd like a little bit more space. And I'm just going to bring it over a little bit here so I get it out of the way. There we go. So now we can see it a little bit better. So here's my chart, and I'd like to click on the little plus symbol, because this is the other way of doing it. Maybe I want to have a chart title. So when I put my mouse over it, it automatically shows me what it would look like. So I put my mouse over it. Uh-oh, it did that again, did it? It did again. I seem to be having a little bit of difficulty with this product. And I think the reason is because of Teams. Because Teams is running in the background. Oops. Ay, ay, ay. Give me 1 second. Yeah, you notice it's gone bye-bye. Okay, just gonna delete that, maybe. Don't you love it when these things break down on you? Okay, let's create a new one. Okay, so once again, here, I'm gonna put this on its own sheet. Not sure why it's doing what it's doing. but yeah, let's choose the same thing. Okay, so now I want to put a chart title, and you'll notice there's a little arrow here. That little tiny arrow, when I put my mouse over it, allows me to choose different options. So if I click on that little arrow, it says, you want it above, do you want it in the middle, do you want other options? And there are many other kinds of options. So if I click on that, it tells me there are different options that I can choose here for location. I can choose whether I want it to be in the middle, horizontal. Again, I can choose any kind of option I want to put this in. So I'm just going to simply put in, once again, Mike's chart. And we'll just delete that title. Whoops. There you go. So now I have Mike's chart and it's in there. And of course, if I wanted to, I could then change some of the coloration to it as well. You know, maybe I want to put a specific color in there, or perhaps I want to fill with a specific color as well. I can do that as well. It's up to you entirely what you do with it. Right now I have no fill color, so let's just put in a white background. Otherwise it's transparent. So I'm just going to change that to white. There we go. Okay. So once again, I can choose other things too, like the axes, and maybe I want to put in an axis, and it could be the primary, or it could be vertical or horizontal. It's up to you entirely. And of course, all these other elements here are also possible. So maybe I wanted to have that legend, which I definitely wanted to have a legend in this. So I can now come in here and I can put a legend in. Let's come down here to legend, little arrow here. So I get to decide where it goes. It could be at the right side. It could be the top. It could be the left, the bottom. And there are other options too where I actually put it. So I'm just simply going to put it on the right-hand side. There you go. So now I have a chart that actually contains even more information here. And I can change anything that's down here. If I don't like gross pay, I can put in total pay if I want to. You'll also notice here the styles that are possible. And this is the little brush. Well, the styles are up here as well. So maybe I want to choose one of these styles. Okay. And there are quite a few of them that I could actually pick and choose from. Or I can come in here and decide which particular style I prefer. It's just whatever is easiest for you. That's the key element here. And of course, if I want to change the color palette, I can do that as well. So styles, and we also have our chart filters. Now, Jane was asking about this earlier. So here maybe what I want to do is filter the data here. This is really a nice tool. Maybe what I really want is I don't want to have everything. I only want this particular employee. I want this employee, excuse me, I want this employee, and that's all I want is those employees. And what I also would like is I don't want all the categories. I only want gross pay. So apply. And that's all the information that comes up. And yet I still have the ability to come back here and add them in differently. Maybe I've had enough of that guy. I want the red one. And maybe I also want this one here. So I'll just reapply. And now I have a different set of people. So yes, you can sort. It's just a different approach to doing so. But you do have that capability. And when you're selecting data, you also have that ability to come in here and make some changes as to what data you're actually selecting and how you want to do it. But my suggestion is use the filter here. And this will allow you to actually go through this and pick and choose any particular category or individual that you're really interested in. And of course, if you decide you don't have enough data, you can always select the data as well and come back in here and maybe add some of the other people as well, like add this one and that one, then click OK, and of course they're added now. And filter.
Where is the function if you wanted to pick the top 5 people that have the highest gross pay? Where would you do that?
Oh, in that case, we have to create a table. So this particular chart is based on the data that's already there. So let's just pull this across. Okay, so this data here, we need to make this into a table so that we can actually filter it. So all I'm going to do is come up here to the Home tab, and there are several ways of doing this. This is the quickest. In styles, we can actually choose a table. So I can choose any design I want. I'll just choose this one in orange. Okay, it says, does your table have headers? Yes, it does. These fields, name, hour, overtime, these are the fields and they're the headers that you want to keep. So make sure that's there. Click OK. And now I can come in here and filter that information if I'm so inclined. Maybe I really only want these people. And of course, it changes my table as well. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Fantastic. So as I said before, you have a phenomenal amount of control here. The only thing we're not touching upon is the pivot table. Pivot tables and the charts that they create are incredibly powerful. They are extraordinarily powerful tools. They allow us to do basically what we just did, but with 1 or 2 mouse clicks. And we can drag and drop for sorting and doing all kinds of wild things with it. That's something for an advanced course. Right now, you need to get your handle around this section that we're doing right now. Now, I'm going to make one more modification here. And I just wanted to show you that you do have this capability. So I'm just going to pull my chart out of the way. There you go. So it's out of the way. And right now, when I click on this chart, okay, you can see that this column and this column are chosen. What if I want to expand this a little bit? Maybe what I actually want to do is I want to expand it slightly so that it actually comes across to there. Okay, so I bring it to here. And now it brings all that data in with it. And maybe I don't need to have all of it, so I'll go back here and I'll just remove some of that again. Okay, so maybe I only want to have the hourly rate. So by grabbing that little square at the bottom, I can actually decide where that information is going to be. And more specifically, where the data is actually coming from. And maybe I don't want all of them, so I'll just choose the first 2. Again, by grabbing those little fill handles, I can shift things around a little bit. And that gives me a clear understanding as to what data I want. And you and I know that when we put our mouse on the line around a particular group of cells, we can actually drag it, okay? Or we can make it a little smaller. Maybe what I really want to do is bring it down here to only 1. I just want to take a picture of this. So I'll take a screenshot. So right click, I'll copy this, or I'll take a screenshot of it, and then I'll post it somewhere, and maybe it's in a document. And then I can come back in here and grab this one and maybe just see what's the comparison between the 2. So each of these tools allows me a tremendous amount of control over creating one of these particular documents. I'm just going to drag this up a little bit. There's a reason why I want to do this. Okay, I'm just going to click here for a moment. Going to delete it. I'm going to come back in here, open this back up again. So I'm going to select everything. And I'll click OK. Remember my filter here. And this time I'm going to use another tool. So since it's already selected, and I don't want all this data. I only want regular pay, gross pay. So I'll choose the names. I'll hold the control key down, choose regular pay, and then holding that control key down, gross pay as well. So now I only have these two plus the names of each one of the employees. But there's another tool here I really like, and that happens to be the slicer. So if I choose slicer, it allows me to filter really fast, okay? Now, maybe I want to do it by name, and maybe I want to do it by hourly rate. No, I want to do it by, let's say, yeah, well, hourly rate. We'll do hourly rate, and also gross pay. Click OK. There you go. So now I can actually sort by all three of these elements. There you go. Now I don't have a chart, but if I had a chart, I could then decide which particular client I want to see. Okay, and you notice it changes as I click on them. I want to see the information here. There is nothing for this particular client. So this one is highlighted. So obviously his hourly rate is $15. And it also tells me that his pay is going to be $570. So let's create a chart as well. Let's go back to insert. And I'll create one of these charts. Let's create the 3D. Okay, so there you go. So there's my 3D chart. I have two of them here. I don't want the other one. Oops, come on. Fantastic. Done. Okay. So turning off the filters by clicking on the filter, there we go. So once again, I'm going to select this data. And I'm going to choose my bar chart. Actually, what about this one? No, don't want that one. Let's choose this one. We'll take the 3D. There you go. So there I go, and I have each one of these. So I'm just going to make them a little bit out of the way. Pull that over here. Pull this one over here. Where's the other one? There we go. We'll pull this one over here. So now I can pick and choose between the three of them and get a much better idea. So I showed you you could filter by creating a table, but we can also use one of these slicers. And if I happen to click on a particular individual, let's pick on this one, then it tells me that inside of this, let's just pull that chart out of the way. It's showing me the chart, but really small. So let's make that a little bit bigger. There you go. So now I can actually see this individual. What if I chose this individual? So I click on that guy. What about Cortana? Click on that one. Oh, okay, how about this guy down at the bottom? Click on that one. You notice how these change, and now I could take a picture of each one of them. And I could even include the data here as well if I was so inclined. So maybe I'll do that. Let's just go into chart design, quick layout, and I'll put the table information underneath it. And once again, I'll choose somebody else. Let's choose this fellow. And you notice the numbers change as well. And of course, I can use the other slices here as well to look at them and get a general idea. It'll always tell me by bolding it which one is active. So in other words, I can see 462 right here for regular pay. So really all I needed was to have the names of these individuals, click on the name, and of course the information comes up. I may want to make more space so that I can actually see it more clearly. There you go. It's a little bit much, isn't it? Fantastic. So there we go. I could have moved this chart information and the table to another side of it. I can come up here and choose maybe this fellow. So I can see his values as well. So the slicer allows me, and that's in insert, by the way, insert, the slicer. There's also the timeline. I'm not going to get into the timeline at the moment, but the slicer allows me to pick and choose what I would like the data to come from, where that data should actually be focused. I can remove these as well. So click on that, delete, delete. And this one will just refilter. There you go. So everything is back again. And if I wanted to, we also have an option here. So this particular option allows me to choose multiple. So up until this point, we were only getting one person. Okay, so one person at a time. But if I choose this option, I can now pick several at a time. So this one here, and I'll choose this one. There you go. So all three of those have actually been chosen, and there's the information about them. So I can do contrast to find out about each and every one of these individuals, to find out how they stack up against other employees and how much is being earned by each one. Let's just say you had multiple locations for your business and you wanted to show kind of a graphical representation of what the employees were earning at that particular location, or the salespeople, how well are they selling their product. You could use the information you've just created. So once again, this is the easiest approach, is simply to highlight the data you want. So let me just turn this back off and I'll get rid of this slicer. Highlight the information that you want to make a chart out of, and then simply go to Insert. You could either choose Recommended, which will give you recommendations as to what the computer thinks would probably represent your data the best, or you can decide All Charts and choose the type of formatting you would prefer, something that you like better than something else. So here, as I said, I actually like the 3D chart of the pie, because simply I can literally take any one of these slices and I can remove it and show the difference of each one. And since there are options here for 3 dimensions, I can use 3-dimensional work as well by simply moving this around, formatting it, shifting it about, and making sure that you can see it from different angles. Any questions so far? I know it's a lot of material. Yes, no, maybe, could be, should be, have no idea, leave me
So
alone.
basically, graphic designing is loaded with features, like too much to explore, right? So, yeah.
Not
So
quite
we have
much.
to practice a lot to
You do.
explore these many features, you know.
Yep, you definitely have to practice. So that's what I want you to do. I want you to go to Cengage. I do want you to look at Cengage, and I want you to start working on Cengage. You'll find training there. Also want you to be aware that a few of you are a little bit behind on some of the assignments that you have to complete. And I've sent you emails if that's the case, and I want you to pick it up a little bit. So go in there and really go to town of, excuse me, of getting those things finished. Do the training for today, the project for today, the quiz for Friday is done today. And then you have a quiz again tomorrow. So you definitely want to make sure that you are moving forward. And remember, Friday, there's a final exam. So you definitely want to go over everything that you've been going over. Make sense?
Yes. There's also a Cengage app that I recently downloaded, so you can do your reading on the go. It's really great.
Yes, you can do that as well with the book. So just like Jane said, you can download the app for the book and you can read through the book as well.
Oh, Michael, today there is also quiz, right?
Yep.
Okay. Tomorrow is also?
There'll be a quiz tomorrow as well.
Okay. Okay.
Michael,
Yep.
I've been having a problem uploading the projects. Like every time I complete the project and I try to upload it, like I follow the instructions. I save it as what it says to save it as, the main document, and it doesn't allow me to upload the projects. So I'm not able to hand them in.
Okay. The only thing that can prevent you from uploading it, I'm just going to open this up. Hold on. I just have to log in again. Oops. One of the nasty things in here is it logs me out every 5 minutes. So, okay. So here with the projects, when you actually try to upload it, you have to make sure the name is correct. And one of the things that can go wrong on you is that when you downloaded it, you may have downloaded it more than once, which means that beyond the _1, you oftentimes end up with bracket. So it'll say bracket with a number and then a bracket. And you'll end up changing, let's say, the number 1 to a number 2, as you see it here. So you do have this 1 and you switch it to a number 2, but it still has that bracket with a number and a bracket. Just looking for an example of that. I have one here. This is a simple example of it. So you can see where you have a number within a bracket. Now you may have your file here. Actually, I should have a file that has that. Let me see here. Yep, right there. So this one right here, which says _1 bracket 1 bracket. If you have that extra bracket, you need to delete it. And the easiest way of deleting it is, as long as you don't have another one with the same name. Now I have one here, so I'm going to have to delete this one just so I can do what I want to do here. Okay, so I have this file. It's got that bracket 1 bracket. I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to rename it. And you'll notice that it highlights it. So I'm just going to click at the end of one. I'm going to highlight that space with the bracket 1 bracket, and I'll press delete. And then press enter. And now that file is like that. So if that were a number 2, and it had that, just like it has here with the bracket 1 bracket, that bracket 1 bracket is preventing you from uploading, because it's not the file it's looking for. It's looking for a file that has a 2 with a dot, and then it has the extension. And all you're interested in is it has an underscore with a 2, and that's all you needed to have. But if it's actually trying to upload a file that has that extra bracket with a number, then it will not allow you to upload it, period. So just double check the file that you're trying to upload and make sure that 1 has been changed to a 2 when you saved it.
Okay, I understand. Thank you so much.
Okay. And for everybody, that's something I want you to remember because a few of you have run into that. It's a very simple problem. And the problem is simply that when you download the file the first time, it downloaded correctly. But you can only have the same name once in a file, in a folder. So when you download it a second time, it appends it with that bracket 1 bracket. And then if you download it again, you get that bracket 2 bracket. So you need to strip that little section off when you save your file and make sure that you are uploading just that one file. So just keep that in mind going forward. Any other questions?
Yeah, can I do the quiz, Michael?
Of course you can.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
Is that all for today, Michael?
That's it.
Thank you, Michael. Have a nice day.
Okay, take care.
Thank you, Michael.
Yep.